So let's go ahead and start building the user interface for our movie quiz app. And when you go ahead and launch your screen, obviously you're just going to have the first screen. It's important for us to go ahead and change the name of the app while we're here, which we'll just call Quiz Game, or you could call it Movie Trivia or something like that. And then you can go ahead and title the screen as well. So of course that's this part up here at the top, and I'm just going to call it Movie Quiz. So there's really only a couple elements that we're going to build to our UI as we get started, and that is an image and basically a place where the question is going to get asked. So we're going to bring those two things out right now. So the first thing is we'll bring a label out, and what we're going to be doing is asking the question in here, so we might as well go ahead and call this question label. And then the other thing that we're going to need is an image, so we'll pull an image out here. And this will be the image of our celebrity that kind of goes along with the question. So I'll call it the celebrity image. And we need to kind of pause and think about how our app is going to work here. We certainly could build an app with multiple screens, like so if we had 5 questions, we have 5 different screens with 1 question per screen. But that seems like an awful lot of work and an awful lot of recoding each time for each screen. What we'd really rather do is kind of switch out the text of the question itself as well as switching out the image kind of at the same time as we move on to a new question. And that's really the core functionality of what we're trying to work on as we build this app. So we've got those in there, and we can go ahead and, if we want to, we could fill in the text for label 1 just to make that, like question goes here. But we're actually going to find out in just a second that the user's never actually going to see that text because when the screen is launched, we're going to go ahead and insert the first question. So let's go ahead and start building that, start coding the back end, kind of what's going to happen. And before we do that, I should say one more thing. Down here later, we're going to build the functionality for where the user can actually insert the answer and then submit the answer. So let's jump into our blocks. Okay, so let's start beginning our coding. As we think about this, kind of the direction that we want to go, we want to create 3 separate lists. One is going to be about questions, one will be about the answers to those questions, and then the third is kind of going to be correlated as well, which will be the images to use for each of those questions. So in order to build that, let's go ahead and start creating a list. So we can use this create an empty list, not create an empty list. We want to go ahead and make a list. And these will just be the items that we're going to plug in. So we're going to start with 4 questions. So if you click on that blue box in the corner, you can modify. And this will have 4 items in it. And what I'd really like to do is just store those all inside of a variable, which will allow me to just pull up that variable, which means I'm pulling up the entire list. So we'll go ahead and create a variable to store this list in. And since this will be the list of questions, we'll call it our questions list. And then we're probably going to want to do the same thing, but we'll this time have answers be in that list. And finally, we are going to want to have an images list that each of the images in this list will get matched up with each of the questions, and eventually we'll use the answers to check to see if the user's answer is correct. So I'm going to go ahead and actually plug all those in. You don't need to watch me do that. So you can just pause the video once you see those questions and answers show up in that list. And then I have added a couple of images. You can actually see them down here in the media tray. So if you want to make your own app, you certainly can do that, or you can find these available on the resources folder. All right, here we go. All right, so I've taken a minute to go ahead and insert each of the questions and answers. The thing that we want to pay attention to is the fact that the first question should go with the first answer, should go with the first picture. So all of these questions are related to the actor or the actress that we've chosen. For example, James Earl Jones is the one who famously does the voice of Darth Vader. And so I've just called it jones.jpg. So the one thing you're going to make sure is to exactly type in each of the image names that you've uploaded. The spelling here won't really matter. Well, the spelling will matter, but the capitalization won't really matter as we build this app out. So we've really got kind of a good functioning list so far. Let's go ahead and make it so that when the screen starts up for the first time, we're going to go ahead and display the first question as well as the first image. We won't worry about the answers until later. So in order to do that, you need to click on the screen one property over here, or object over here. And what we're interested in is this first event called whenScreenOne.initialize. And what we really want to do is we want to alter the question text, which is for the question label here. And so we'll go ahead and select the question label.text, and we'll use the setter block this time. And what we would really like to do is to set it to the first item in the questions list. So there's a few ways you can do that. Again, we can just hover, and we'll go ahead and do this. But in order to figure out which item we want to get, we've got to go back into the list menu here. And you'll notice that this option, it says select a list item, and then it asks for the list, and that list will be our list of questions. And then it wants the index. So one thing that I could do is just put in question 1 kind of straight away and plug that in, and that would actually work. We should usually always be picking the first item in the list unless we wanted to randomly generate this. But there's kind of a better way. In fact, what I'd really like to do is, because we're going to be looping through this, we're eventually going to want to keep track of where we are in the list. So keeping track, that's kind of like an internal memory kind of a thing. That screams variable. So we're going to actually create another variable, and this time we'll call that variable index. And here's what's nice about this. This index is going to be the place in the list starting at 1, which means if we initialize index to be worth 1 and later change it, we can actually just call index on each of these lists, and they should all match up. So if index is 2, I can look up questions list and the value of index, and answers list and the value of index, and images list and the value of index. They should all match nice and tight. So we'll go ahead and just insert then the index value, which right now we're initializing to be 1 when this app starts up. And then the second thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to go ahead and change the image of our celebrity. So we'll set the picture value, and in this case we'll pretty much do exactly the same thing, except the list that we're going to be choosing from is this images list here. So we'll go ahead and just change that, and the index should be exactly the same value. So this should, if we've done this correctly, launch our app nice and smooth with the first question. Alright, so I'm going to actually go ahead and launch an emulator version that just runs in my browser here. So my phone is actually connected to my browser here. We'll go ahead and start up the App Inventor companion, and I'll jump over here and we'll connect it up. So the reason why I want to show you all of this is that just really making sure that we're initializing our screen kind of for the first time. We've seen this before, and let me jump back over, and it seemed to have lagged. There we go. Okay, so we are getting our image to display, and our question is working out okay up here. It's a little bit crammed on the side, and we could probably change some of the style here, but this would work pretty well. What you'll want to notice is that down here is where we're going to build our functionality for the user to go ahead and answer the question. So, so far so good. Let's go ahead and begin moving forward with the rest of this app, which the next stage we're going to focus on how do we increment index, and what is that going to look like as we begin building this app out.